Hey guys, welcome back to another weekly horoscope. Today we're going to be looking at the astrology of August 17th to August 23rd. My name's David. I'm your astrologer from Haunted Cerebral Astrology. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all your support. Thanks for liking, commenting, subscribing. It all means a lot. It goes a super long way. I just want to mention again, if you want to book services with me or do a consultation with me, just head over to my website and book a consultation through my scheduler system. You can find the link in my bio. There won't be any blog posts this week. I'm going to be traveling, so won't have time to do that stuff. I got a lot to get together before I leave, so sorry about that. But this week's a bit different than last week, so we'll get right into it. I'm going to try and do the election videos if I have time, but if not, we'll try again next week. Okay, let's get into the astrology for this week. So let me bring up the list of transits for the week. So annotator. All right. So I didn't really have time to dig so much into the transits this week, so we're going to kind of like freestyle it a bit. This week, though, main things that happen is that we start Virgo season at the end of the week. So happy birthday to all the Virgos going into next week. But main things this week are, first off, we have that Mercury-Mars conjunction on the 19th. And then we also get a second full moon in Aquarius. Where is that? That's later in the week. We also have the Uranus retrograde station, so stationing retrograde, and then right after that full moon we get the moon ingress into Pisces, and then the sun goes into Virgo. So let's try and break this down one thing at a time. Like I said, I'm kind of freestyling it, so hopefully we can do this peacefully. All right, so basically starting on Tuesday, August 17th in Berlin, Germany. But yeah, it doesn't really matter where you are, just adjust the time to where you are. Think of it like a world clock. The astrology is going to work everywhere. It just depends on where you are, depending on the timing and things like that. But basically, a lot of the times transits even happen. You're going to feel the effects of them or see the effects of them just before or after the transits too. So it doesn't really matter where you are. Think of it like a world clock. Okay, so first things first, the moon on Tuesday, beginning of Tuesday, the moon just separated from that South Node conjunction. So there was something about when the moon was going through Scorpio and I think also Libra, where there was things that, like when it was going through Libra, it was like, okay, let's keep the peace. Let's kind of let go of the problems and keep the peace for now. And then when it was going through Scorpio, you know, we got that first quarter moon. So there was something about pushing through to get through that first, that new moon in Leo, to turn that into something, to see some of the challenges of that first new moon, and then to push forward into gaining more light, seeing some of the things that we wanted to see planted at that time start to take fruition. And then as the moon moved into Sagittarius, there may have been that uncomfortable, vulnerable period of the moon being in its fall in Scorpio, and then kind of like getting out of there. It was like, okay, it's time to get out of here. And I thought that was interesting too. I was kind of following on the side some of the movements in Afghanistan with the Taliban. And it was interesting how a lot of the falls of all the cities kind of coincided with that move through Libra. And then with the president of Afghanistan leaving Afghanistan once the moon moved into Sag, and then we saw Kabul fall. So there was something about the moon being in its fall, something about fleeing, people wanting to get out, find peace, and that each of the cities just kind of fell peacefully. There was no real fighting actually happening. So that was kind of interesting. I noted that. But anyway, so the moon's squaring with Mars this day. So there could just be kind of like maybe something when the moon was going through Virgo, or there was some sort of like information that might have been missed or was not dealt with at that time. Now there's something kind of like tension built from that on some level, and needing to push through that, needing to kind of deal with it. And then the moon kind of takes in that square, there's some kind of like tension between something that's being figured out, some information that's coming in, something that has to do with that conjunction of Mercury into Mars coming in the next couple days, and something about like learning something that needs to be dealt with in a very quick and precise manner, something even surgical of some kind. Anyway, so so the moon then will, whoops, I moved that by day. Let's go back to hours here. And so the moon's going to keep moving forward, separating from that square to Mars. And then we'll make a square to Neptune as the sun starts kind of enters that engagement with Jupiter as well. So moon makes that square to Mars. Moon makes that square to Neptune. So something about like maybe some of when the moon was going through Virgo and going through Libra and trining with Neptune in Scorpio, something about like the fantasy was nice, the fantasy was real, wanting to live more in the comforts and the disconnect from the reality of things. But now with that square to with Neptune, it's like, okay, well, the fantasy is kind of like the rose-colored glasses are off, the veil's been revealed, there is reality to the situation, whatever it is that we kind of ignored over the last days, the last week. And now it's like, okay, gotta have to deal with that. So yeah, and then basically the last thing the moon does before the day ends is it makes that trine to the sun. So even though maybe there was some tension and some hostility and some fear that came with that square to Mars, at the same time, we kind of like seeing, okay, there's some reality to this, we have to deal with this. But then with that trine to the sun, I see that as a good thing. So whatever it was that was kind of scary or like difficult to have to deal with through the day, this kind of like feeling this pressure to have to do something, this trine to the sun is at least like, okay, the circumstance and the actions forward, the plot line forward are at least on track on some level. And there's some solutions that can be found, and there's some way of finding support from the sun and this life-giving force, and then where we are and how we're receiving that and translating it to that situation of getting in touch with the reality check of that square to Neptune. Anyway, so I'm going to try and go quick through this week anyway. So let's go into just right into Wednesday. So first things first, on Wednesday, we get that sextile of moon to Jupiter, which translates, I think, that kind of nice trine from the sun, and then moves it over to Jupiter there. So there's something about like being able to, I think, modify the plan, modify the vision forward, the where things, we're seeing the bigger picture of things, that maybe that we could find some solutions of some kind, and to make that quick adjustments that we need to make before the moon leaves Sagittarius. So maybe feeling like, okay, there's still ways of figuring this out. There's still ways of finding solutions, and there's ways of getting support and unifying things and making and shaping the plan so that we can get back on track to where we're heading on some level. So there's still time to get things done. There's still enough resources that we can use to make things happen. So yeah. And then moon moves into Capricorn, and things just get a bit more serious. Things become a little bit more like, okay, we really got to follow the plan. We got to do things one thing at a time. There's no more time for dilly-dallying. It's like things have to get done now. There's no more space for just frivolous things. We have to be serious. We have to get the work done. We have to follow the plan. You know, whatever list we had out, we have to get those things done one thing at a time. So I think with the moon moving into Capricorn on Wednesday, it's like Wednesday's really like get this shit together kind of a day. Like there's no more time to do anything else really. And to make the trade-off between, and to be like, okay, we have to take this serious thing, maybe sign a contract of some kind. Okay, and then the moon makes that square to Venus, and I think on some level that kind of like confirms it on some level. Maybe there's some tension in relationships on some level, some sort of like thing that was off with relationship, or what wasn't really clear when the moon was going through Libra at the time. Now that things are more clear from learning what needed to be learned with the moon's transit through Sagittarius. Now there could be some tension in relationship. There could be some tension to the peace. There's not really keeping the peace can't just be done by forgetting about it and not really dealing with whatever the problem is. It's like, no, there's something that has to be dealt with, and maybe a hard conversation needs to be had, or a revealing of something that's been not a topic that won't necessarily keep the peace altogether. And then that's basically it for Wednesday. So we can actually just fast forward. The moon just keeps going through Capricorn until we get to Thursday. So let's move back a couple hours there. Okay, so Thursday is kind of more the bigger day. There's a lot of lunar transits going on. Most of them are trines, which are great. And I think that really just like specifies that Thursday is a good day for things to go really smoothly. We also get that conjunction of Mercury with Mars. So like, I see this really as like exchanges, and anything mercurial is going to go really fast, really direct, it's going to strike very quickly. Mercury rules over things like travel, for instance, exchanges of any kind, monetary exchanges, things having to do with technology, things having to do with messages and markets, also having to do with sports and things like that. So with all these mercurial matters, once it kind of bonds with Mars, there's something very action oriented with Mars, something very aggressive with Mars, maybe even violent on some level, or militaristic on some level, something very like striking and sped up. This could be a day when something very surgical takes place, something that like very precision based and needs a lot of skill and precision to do something will take place between Wednesday into Friday, really. And with the moon making the trine there, to me, I see that as like it's not going to necessarily be a bad thing. There is some solution to be had. Moon making the trine there is just like, okay, this is something that we can deal with, something that there's a solution to be found. With Uranus making also a trine to, we're building up to that trine with Mercury, and Mercury's building up to the trine to Uranus as well. So something that could be something very sudden, but also disruptive, is also somehow supportive and innovative on that level too. There could be a new innovations to technologies as well, even in your everyday, but also on a grander scale. Somehow technology, something from a very stable place that we don't expect to have any disruptions from it, will bring some sort of support or powerful kind of positive impression onto mercurial matters at this time, matters that are more executive, that are very dynamic and want to be figured out very quickly. I think Mercury is really dominating everything in this whole exchange between all the planets too, because of its domicile, but also its exaltation rulership. So both the circumstances of these exchanges and the ideals of them are unifying simultaneously. So there's something very executive about it, rational. There's a rational quality to this combination. Mars is very fierce, though, quite furious of a planet. So maybe often wanting to take the lead on things, but in this case is becoming very analytical in its efforts, something very like fiery and analytical to figure something out very passionately and very quickly. So it could be something very technical, mechanical, diagnosis of some kind. Maybe something is forged. This could be a good day. I think there could be a really powerful transit for magical elections, mercurial magical elections, especially if you're a forger working with metals on some level. This could be a really good transit to work with metals and to forge something that's innovative and uses power in a way that's to figure things out, to really figure out problems. And I think that trine to Uranus, it just continues all the way through to the 21st too. So something very innovative could be taking place. And in my opinion, this is really the most productive transit between Mercury and Mars throughout the whole year. And I think really just with the moon making the trines through the whole day with both, we get that. I'm not really doing this. I'm not really so into the aspect shapes, but I mean, look at that. It's like, it's this grand trine. So bringing together where we are with something very serious, following through plans, following things and taking them very seriously, maybe following the rules, dealing with peoples and authorities, peoples and governments, people who have more authority over us, but just dealing with it in a manner that's suitable. Even though the moon is really uncomfortable, it's in its detriment, so it's not in its safe space. At the same time, with these trines, I think there's a way in which things just go ahead as smoothly as possible. There's no setbacks to what's going forward. So yeah, I really think that Thursday in general is just like this day when things really smoothly go forward, and then by the end of the day, the moon makes a sextile to Neptune. So there's something about meeting some kind of fantasy and vision, coming in touch with fantasy and vision, coming in touch with a journey of some kind. Of journey comes to an end where something very fantastical goes on, or at least you start to have, there's a vision that where that whole journey came from. Now you're at somewhere where maybe you can have the story of some sort of fantasy take place, or you make a modification to get yourself back into a place where you feel a bit more like you can disconnect from the hardcore reality of the everyday, especially as the moon moves into that conjunction with Pluto, and it's a very serious sign of Capricorn. Okay, so let's move forward into Friday. Moon just keeps moving towards the conjunction with Pluto. Yeah, I think whatever kind of fear things went on, I think when Moon was going, like I said, when Moon was going through Venus, I think that something kind of serious went on, something that we maybe just put aside to keep the peace at the time. And now with the moon making that conjunction to Pluto, it's kind of like, now we have to really deal with it, like that reality on some level. There's a bit of fear, getting in touch more with the fear, maybe integrating it, and that's the best way to let go of it, is to get to really put it in front of you and not like keep it in the dark. And so I think with the moon shining its light, like it is a luminary, so it's going to be shining some light on those kinds of fears that we have, or fears in the world, and being able to see them more clearly, and at least to address them and to integrate them and to try to understand them. But kind of really the big thing, there's a couple of big things going on this day, and I kind of already talked about the Mercury's trine to Neptune, but that to Uranus, but that basically perfects this day. So something really innovative, some sort of free flow of travel goes on as well. Something very quick in travel, maybe, and quick in exchanges. But kind of the big thing is that Sun to Jupiter opposition. So I think this kind of like settles things with whatever went on with the Mercury opposition to Jupiter. So whatever big statements were made at that time, I was kind of just freely. Like during all its transits last week with Mercury moving into Virgo and that opposition to Jupiter, I was just doing a bunch of reshares with stories that really just like were such literal translations of these transits. And I think with Sun making that opposition to Jupiter, I think it's kind of like, okay, now maybe some of the things that were quickly said, some of the quick things that kind of changed over, some of the big solutions, that these plans that started to be announced about things like the US's infrastructure plan that was released recently. Like, it was a big plan. And I think, Mercury rules over many travel things, and it's all about, and Jupiter too. So there's all about this finding a plan for infrastructure. And I think with the Sun making opposition, there could be settlements on that made, or at least the Sun's now trying to make a conscious effort to try and translate that. So maybe some things that were part of Jupiter's big plan to unify things and make a good holistic operation, Sun is like, okay, well, how does that actually work? How's that going to work on the everyday? Let's actually look at it and understand this thing that we've kind of set for ourselves, and try to do it to the best of our ability. I think Sun is all about the best of our ability, right? While Jupiter is like thinking more about like what can be the absolute best case scenario. Sun is like, okay, what's the best of our ability? And the Sun is still in Leo, so it has that domicile potential to do things to the best of its ability. And so I think that this opposition is kind of like maybe with Mercury kind of pulling things and wanting to make things dissect things a bit and figure them out a bit. And now Sun is kind of like, okay, how do we push those back into making the plan really happen? Okay, so let's move forward. yeah, and then this day also we get that Uranus retrogradation. So Uranus stations retrograde here. You can see that R just appeared there. So that means it's retrograde now. And for me, this is like really just recalling things. Like remember what was going on maybe in August 2020. I mean, Uranus is at different degrees than it was last year, but just Uranus has been in Taurus, since 2018, 19. So, whatever kind of big changes have taken place in your Taurus part of life, every time it's retrogrades, there's going to be some new shift in that too. So just think back onto, I think, August last year, and maybe some things that were suddenly changed in that time. These are going to be recalled on some level. And especially if you have any planets, especially the 7 traditional planets at the 14th degree marker in any of the fixed signs. So Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, or Aquarius, if you have any of the 7 traditional planets in those degree markers or the ascendant or midheaven, this could be intensive. It could intensify things for you specifically, especially within a 3-degree range. So just pay attention to that. Think about what was going on last year, and that could be something that kind of disrupts things or suddenly shifts things. Things turn in a new direction, in a direction that was unexpected and sudden, disrupting on some level. Okay, clear those. So next thing is, I already talked about that Uranus trying to, Mercury trying to Uranus, but yeah, I think there's something supportive from that retrogradation too, something that's saying like this shift is meant to happen on some level. And with Mercury, it's like making some calls on that, making quick exchanges with that, figuring that out, making the conversations that need to happen and decisions that need to be made with that kind of switch over. So yeah, and then Moon then moves into Aquarius. So we get that shift back into Aquarian matters. And, now that Moon is in Aquarius again, we're going to have that full moon energy coming in. So it's going to feel like something's really culminating, something's really building up, something really blossoming with something that would have started during that new moon cycle, and now it's like blossoming in our Aquarian part of life. The moon is, of course, approaching the conjunction to Saturn as it does in everyone, and then reactivating the Uranus-Saturn square on some level once it moves through there in the next day. But yeah, first things first, Moon first makes that trine to Venus, and I really think this is like highlighting already the best parts of Venus in its domicile in Libra, because with Moon in Aquarius, it's bringing up that Saturnian air vibes of like how things are really disseminated on the world. There's this big world story going on. And with Moon making the trine to Venus in Saturn sign, which is Saturn being the exaltation ruler of Libra, I think this is really showing that there can be support between these two parts of our lives, between these Libra part of our life and the Aquarian part of our life, that we can find a good translation of support between those two things. And I think the Moon making that first trine to Venus before Venus makes the trine to Saturn, it's kind of like bringing that story into our lives, showing us the potential of that, showing us how Venus and Libra really is a good thing for us right now, and that we can be serious about these finding commonality, these finding cooperating peace of mind exchanges of things, and also a support network between things. And I think with Moon making that first trine to Venus, it's like really like settling how good Venus in Libra is going to be for us for the next little bit. And just before Moon moves into the conjunction with Saturn, I think it's kind of just translating that and making this conjunction to Saturn a little bit more peaceable than the last transits of Moon through Aquarius have been. I think this is like saying, at least to me, it's saying that like this Moon, that Venus in Libra is bringing us peace of mind right now. And there's something about maybe things slowing down a bit, some delays happening, things being a bit more blocked and limited in some cases, but also very airy and open, and not really like kind of like being on an island full of kind of out in the open air. And although you can't really get in contact with other people right now. There's something very open about that and freeing and liberating on some level. All right, and let's move into Saturday. Really blasting through this, I think, but yeah, I'm gonna have to today. So first things first, yeah, Moon makes that conjunction to Saturn. So just translating over what, it's still carrying over that engagement with Venus. So it's really carrying over what was kind of understood and integrated from Venus, peaceful, loving, sensual, relative things of keeping the peace and cooperating and finding commonality with things, and finding friendships and relationships of things, and how Moon making the conjunction with Saturn. It's like, although that's always going to be a bit of a setback, or things are going to be limited or kind of boundary based. At least I think that it's going to be in a way that we can at least deal with. We can find a way that there's some beauty to that. There's some balance to it. There's some peace to it. And I think that Moon making the conjunction to Saturn is just kind of like bonding that and helping us to understand that like these limitations are not the end of the world and we can deal with them. And then the only other thing that really happens this day is Moon makes this square to Uranus. So there is some tension to something disruptive taking place, maybe something unexpected that happens that doesn't really go according to plan. It's something that, really maybe doesn't feel so comfortable, but it's not the end of the world, I think, especially because Venus, the ruler of Uranus, is in its domicile and it's starting the engagement to Saturn as well. So I think although these things are kind of disrupting and not really best case scenario, it is not the worst. It's not the worst thing that could happen. We can get through that. We can at least deal with this like disruptive part of things. Maybe something in a place that we usually expect to be really secure and safe, somewhere that doesn't really change so much. There's some changes going on. Some things are not really things aren't going as according to the way we expect them. The status quo is a bit off. But it's not the end of the world. It's something that we're just going to have to deal with. It's so. Okay, and then that's basically it for Saturday. So let's go into Sunday. And first thing is that Mars makes that now trine to Uranus. So kind of, I think, for me, this is still like a good thing. I mean, it's a trine, there's some support to it, but it is sudden, and Mars and Uranus dynamics can be a bit weird. I mean, in many ways, Uranus, many of the significations for Uranus are taken from Mars on some level. Between Mars and Saturn, it's taken from them. So there's something very like impulsive about this, something that's impulsive, but also fun, or could be exciting, could be very combustible on some level, but in a way that like makes things move in a way that like with the earth, and moving things in a way that usually are in stable places, or usually in ways that we can have more tactility with them, and we can like do something. We can get, maybe there's something about like going for a hike or something very action oriented, and using our body to do something that's about doing some mission, a mission that begins, that goes very suddenly. It's like a one-day mission, something we go out and we do something very courageous and fun, exciting, even maybe somehow doing something alone as well, or in a way that's maybe the opposite of doing something. I mean, Mars is usually this planet of separating and dividing things, but then Uranus is always going to flip the thing. It's going to flip the table. So maybe it's like doing something that's like maverick and alone on some level, but maybe not doing it alone. Let's go, I kind of see it, but it could be something very sudden and exciting, I think, even, and also in a mercurial way. So there's something very like talkative about it, learning something very very Mars based, something about like using our bodies, using our energy and our effort to do something that has a very mercurial nature to it, of figuring something out and making a plan of something, and making a conversation and exchange that really works out, that's really sudden and changing of the direction of things. Okay, and then Moon moves into the conjunction with Jupiter, and I think just like this is where whatever kind of opposition we had with the sun, because you know it's approaching that full moon, and with it's approaching the Aquarius full moon. So whatever the sun Jupiter opposition was about, now that's kind of like maybe coming to a close. It's culminating. It's solidifying. I think really like the next thing that happens, you know, we get that Aquarius full moon. So this is like the second Aquarius full moon that we've had in the last two lunations. Now, I called it a blue moon before, but it's technically not a blue moon because a blue moon has to happen in the same month, but it's in the same sign. This is not so common. So it's the second run, and really we're seeing now whatever this Aquarius part of our lives is about, there is some culmination to that. There is some kind of seeing things clearly and knowing what that's all about and what's going to be happening there. So check in your chart where this Aquarius, where you have Aquarius, and this double cycle is really figuring something out for you there. So like what is, you know, what's good about that is that I think by mid-August, you know, this negotiation of things has come to some close. There's a resolution to some sort of problem. You know, a solution's really found, one that kind of works for whatever parties are involved in this, and like some sort of a business agreement that comes to a close. And it's a good time, I think, to come to agreement with whatever contracts or legal affairs you have going on. This is like a really good full moon for those things to kind of be resolved. And I think like with that Jupiter opposition that kind of happened just before, I think this suggests that the solutions which are being made are really ones that improve the situation. They don't make things worse. They make them better. And I think Jupiter being back in Aquarius is all about that. It's trying to make things better where things have been kind of crumbling and deconstructing. I mean, Saturn, traditionally Saturn is about decay, you know, so with Saturn being alone in this Aquarius sign, it's like all these potentialities, progresses that are being made, information highways, information society that's starting to kind of like crumble. The cracks are showing through. We can't just deal with everything because we're all connected. It's not possible. And Jupiter's coming back to try and mend the bonds where things needed mending, to unify things, to group together this decentralized part of things where the sun is like, okay, we can only deal with things one at a time. Saturn and Aquarius is like, well, here's everything all at once. See how that deconstructs everything. And Jupiter's like, okay, well, let's start to bring it all together. So at least we have some sort of plan to move forward. So like what things can be done now to improve things moving forward. And then basically right after that, Moon moves into Pisces, and then we get that opposite, wait a second, hold on. Yeah, so Moon moves into Pisces, and kind of like, you know, the energy shifts again. Now we're kind of like taking on this more vision of things maybe working out, things being okay. It's not the like whatever, there was some tensions that were going on the last days, and some really like feelings of things building up and having to be released. They're released now. And now we can have some faith again. We can get some redemption in the situations. We can kind of fall back a little bit into the fantasy of things, you know, with Neptune still in Pisces. There's every time the moon goes through there, it's going to really feel very dreamy and kind of not really wanting to cope with the hardcore realities of things. So, you know, I think with the moon moving in there, and after that conjunction to Jupiter and the full moon, it's like really carrying over whatever solution or resolution was made there. It's allowing us to kind of be like, okay, I can take a break now. I don't have to be obsessed with this so much right now, and I can just kind of let go a bit. So yeah, and then the last thing is the sun moves into Virgo. I mean, it says it moves in on Monday there, but it actually, I think it's like 12, I don't know, like 11:30-ish that it moves in. So anyway, moon moves into Virgo. Happy Virgo season. Now everything that's been going on in our Virgo parts of life, now there's a lot of light being shined there. There's going to be more consciousness about those things. things will start to get to resolve there, and they'll become more of a day-to-day activity that we're kind of enjoying and figuring out. So whatever the conjunction with Mercury and Mars was about, finding solutions to that, and whatever the trines that they've been making to Uranus, now we can kind of like slow that down a bit and try to make a more day-to-day effort of things, make a more, sun is really about our motivations of things. So maybe where things have just been too kind of very quick and figured out and very fast paced. Now with the sun moving in there, it can start to bring some more intentionality to all that, to try to bring us back on course and the course that we're taking on things, and make it less just like boom, 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 and more like, okay, let's try to enjoy all this stuff that we've been figuring out, and try to have some sort of an ideal to it. The ideal is starting to come into that direction of things where we've been really trying to make very quick and fast solutions, very surgical communications and exchanges with things. Now the sun wants to master whatever those things were. If we had to do them really quick, now we can really master them. Okay, and then now on to Monday. So the moon also makes the square to the nodes. So now moving in, things are starting to increase. So even though it's as usual, the moon's now starting to decrease in light, but it's moving towards the north node. So things are starting to increase, even though our energies are decreasing. Something on a physical level is decreasing, but then more things are starting to happen again. Maybe more information's coming out, more messages are coming out, more exchanges are taking place, especially with Mercury, the ruler of the north node, in its own sign. And then we get that nice trine of Venus to Saturn that day on Monday. And I think this is like the best aspect of Venus. I mean, of course, Venus trining Jupiter is going to be great. I mean, the two benefics trining is as good as it gets in astrology. But because, Venus is in its airy domicile, it's more action, decision-making domicile, it's like rebalancing, justice, peacemaking domicile. And then it's trining with the exaltation lord of Libra. And there's a reason that Saturn is the exaltation lord. Like there's judgment calls that need to be made. And I think when these two planets are trining here, it's like really about finding common ground on difficult topics. But these difficult topics, we find a commonality with them, and that agreement is long lasting. It doesn't break the peace. It keeps the peace. And, and we have the necessary tools now that are needed to find and work deals that are sustainable too. Like, Saturn's in its domicile. It's not only the exaltation ruler of Venus, of Libra, it's also in its domicile. So there's just so much resource to make something work, make something that's long lasting, making a commitment that is about peace, that's about more Venus things on some level, about love and friendship, mending and beauty, but also these Saturnian topics of like discipline and order and judgment and containing problems, and thinking about time and how time has a very maturing quality to it that grows things, that also is necessary for us to understand what life is all about. And I think with this trine between the planet of relationship and the planet of impermanence come together, it's like, okay, there's a common agreement made about how things don't last forever, but we can at least find peace between those, and there's still love to be had between those things. So I really like that trine. And then basically the rest of the day is just lunar transits, with Sun making that sextile to Uranus, and whatever adjustment to something that was kind of disrupting from moon's transit through Aquarius, there's some modification that can be made. There's some way of kind of harmonizing things again, something that can be done in a way that doesn't really disrupt the kind of little bit of a delusion that we're playing in. But I mean, it can be a bit, maybe it's a bit aggressive on some level, because at the same time, moon is also making the opposition to Mars. So on one level, it's like moon is like, okay, this thing is kind of off, and there's a way of finding a solution very quickly. I don't have to get out of my little bubble of dreamy, wonderful, like comfort, cuddle puddle zone. But with that opposition to Mars, there's potential for this to be hostile. There's potential for this to be a bit conflicting. So if we're just trying to like, keep in this like dreamy, like fantasy vibe that we're in, and we're not really taking care of the nuances of whatever that adjustment that needs to be made, there could be the potential for some sort of conflict of interest going on with the opposition there. There could be some sort of a competition that happens, some sort of pull and tension, but that's kind of tearing things apart between where we are and where we're wanting to have a really nice time, and where maybe the problem is coming from, and how it's trying to, figure its own things out. It's on its own journey. It's on its own vacation. It's on its own travel plans. It's on its own exchanges and networks and things like that. It's busy on its own vibe. And where we're at is kind of like, we just want to like we just want to have whatever, escape we're in. And we're willing to kind of make the adjustment that needs to be made with the sextile. But if we're not careful, we could end up in some sort of a, adversarial exchange on some level. So just be aware of that moving into Monday, or at least Sunday into Monday, that if you aren't really giving the problem some sort of attention, it could result in conflict. And that could be one that takes time to resolve or is unresolvable. All right, so that's it for this week. I'm going to stop the share now. Just a little brief into next week. Next week is basically lunar transits. So we're working really with more of that domicile energy until Mercury moves into Libra at the end of the week. So main things that I really wanted to point out next week is that Mercury opposes Neptune. So this could be some sort of culmination between the Neptune-Mercurial exchanges that have been going on, especially since the square with Mercury when it did that retrogradation in Gemini earlier in the year, I think in May. What sort of conversations that were just totally off page are now reaching some sort of culmination. Maybe lost in translation conversations are now making some big kind of standoff with each other. And then Sun's going to square the nodes. So kind of meeting where Mercury and Mars were the week before, seeing that halfway point. Now that Sun is there, it's like now everyone really sees it. We see what the winter is going to really be about. Mercury then ingresses into Libra. And I think this is, although Mercury moving out of its own domicile, it's, arguably less good, but Mercury and Venus are going to be in Libra together. And I think the short time of these two planets in Libra together I think it's going to be good for relationships, for Venus types of things, for communications between interpersonal exchanges. So I think that's a good thing in general. And there could be good agreements to find the peace in some level, especially maybe in parts of the world where there's potential for a lot of hostility to be formed. There could be some negotiation agreements that come to light at that time. And then we get that last quarter moon in Gemini. So I really think this kind of emphasizes mercurial matters going on. So that's it for this week, guys. I hope it was good. Like I said, I went kind of freestyle with it. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you want to book a consultation with me, all the links are down in the description below. Thanks always for liking, commenting, subscribing. I'm going to be traveling, so I won't be using the same gears that I'm using here, but we'll try to make it happen. At the very least, I'll do another freestyle transit video. Anyway, so wishing you guys all the best. Thanks always for tuning in. Good luck this week with whatever kinds of things you have to deal with come up. And I'll see you all next week. Keep coming back.